call the excuse me, the Newberry Planning and Zoning Board meeting for Monday, December 4th, 2017, 6 p.m. Call to order. We need an approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. I'll read the agenda just to make sure everybody's aware of it. We'll follow with the pledge. Then we'll approve the minutes of August 29th and October 2nd. New business is 2 quasi-judicial public hearings, followed by old business topics from members for discussion and adjournment. So next on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item is approval of the August 29th minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to look those minutes over?
I have a question about the August 29th minutes. Were we announcing that the Board of Adjustment was going to hear it, or the commission?
Yeah, because under the first one it says City Commission, and under the second one it says Board of Adjustment for those two different applications.
The first application was for, Mr. Chair, was for rezoning. Rezoning or by ordinance, it would therefore be the City Commission, whereas the other action was a special exception request, and special exceptions are heard by the Board of Adjustment.
Right. Thank you for the clarification.
Motion to approve the August 29th and the October 2nd minutes. Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Both minutes are passed. All right, under our new business, we have a excuse me, quasi-judicial hearing for SDP 17-03, an application by Sieber Enterprises Incorporated, Kurt Sieber, whose authorized agent is Locklear and Associates, Lisa Baker, P.E., owner of Alachua County tax parcel 01911-000-000 for site development plan approval to allow for the construction of an 8,400 square foot office warehouse building, a dry retention stormwater management facility, parking lots, sidewalks, utility connections, and a driveway connection to State Road 45. The property is located on 975 Northwest State Road 45, across from the Newtown subdivision, on property described as follows: parcel 01911-000-000, and in our agenda we have a abbreviated legal description of that, which is, with it being in the agenda, is in the official record. Since this is a quasi-judicial procedure, this procedure is to ensure that the applicant provides a complete presentation of their request prior to any testimony being provided by the staff. All public testimony will be taken under oath. Anyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. The procedure we will follow this evening is that we will first hear from the applicant. The applicant's presentation has no time limit. The applicant will then be subject to cross-examination. The staff will then enter the staff report into the record and answer questions. The applicant will have the opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony against the application. Then we will open the floor for public comment. Each comment period will be limited to 5 minutes. Members of the public will have an opportunity to question the applicant or staff. The applicant will have any opportunity for closing arguments, and the public hearing will be closed, and the board will then enter into deliberations. Anybody wanting to make testimony at this point should stand and raise your right hand.
And folks, even if you don't think you're going to testify, if you think there's any chance you're going to want to talk at all, now's the time.
All right.
On this proposal only?
On this one
All right, raise your right hand. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You can be seated. All right, with that, we'll open the floor to the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Baker. I'm a professional engineer with Locklear & Associates. We are the agent for Kurt Sieber and Sieber Enterprises for the Top Shelf Interior Solutions new office warehouse building site plan approval. The site location is 975 Northwest State Road 45, tax parcel ID 01911-000-000. Is located approximately 1 mile north of West Newberry Road on US 27. Surrounding properties include Newtown Phase 1 to the west, Watson Construction to the east, and the north and south parcels are vacant. Back in May, the board approved the future land use amendment for the subject parcel from agriculture to commercial. At that same meeting, the board approved rezoning for the parcel from agricultural to commercial intensive. The parcel itself consists of 2.33 acres. Our actual project area is only 1.63 acres. The total impervious area is 0.69 acres, leaving pervious area of 0.58, and Mr. Sieber's favorite, the top of pond area of 0.36 acres. The proposed building square footage is 8,400 square feet. That's broken down into about 1,400 square feet of office area and 6,900 square feet of warehouse. The required parking is 13 parking stalls. We've provided 14, with one being a handicap stall. Stormwater management is provided with one stormwater management facility. It's 100% dry retention. It's also designed for potential future development of about 5,000 square feet of more impervious area. The site qualifies for a 10-2 permit, and a copy will be provided to the city once it's issued. Access management, the site is accessed by one full driveway access to State Road 45, which is currently being permitted through DOT. And once that permit's issued, we will provide a copy to the city. The utilities might be a little light on the screen, but we're proposing a 2-inch water service connection to the 12-inch main in the right-of-way along State Road 45. And sewer, we've been working very diligently with Public Works on a 6-inch gravity with some off-site improvements to a gravity inlet to the north there, which also includes some easement on Mr. Sieber's property. It's pretty, wraps it up, pretty simple. If you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer it, and Mr. Sieber is here as well.
Questions from the board?
Hi. Looking at your page C.100 of your plans,
Yes, sir.
do you intend to have a turn lane off of State Road 45?
No, sir, DOT did not require that. We wouldn't have enough traffic count that would justify putting in a turn lane into our site.
I notice your building has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 truck bays. I assume these are for semi-truck?
I think Mr. Sieber might be able to answer the trucks and the size. that they can expect. I don't,
My name's Kurt Sieber. Typically, we have just box vans, box trucks, and Econoline 150 type vans. So as far as semi-truck traffic, there may be a UPS truck each business day perhaps, and then maybe 3 times a week, an 18-wheeler type delivery, but we don't have any big trucks coming in on a regular basis as far as, except for the occasional delivery from 2 or 3 of our vendors.
Okay. Question for the planner. Were they required to do a traffic study?
Mr. Chair, for the scale of this development, traffic study wasn't required.
I noticed when we put in the Easton facility, we had to put in a turn lane, and when we required Newtown to put in a turn lane in the industrial park. But did that all come from DOT, or was that?
Mr. Chair, there's a formulation in basically it's a planning traffic analysis book, and you look at the type of business and the anticipated. They have estimates for all the different types of uses, and this type of use generates a fairly small number of trips per day. If you were, especially for FDOT.
But I mean, you don't know because we don't have a traffic study.
No, sir. As part of the driveway connection permit, we had to demonstrate that we weren't increasing the traffic count enough to justify a turn lane or a traffic study.
Okay. And so that's been presented to DOT, and they say
Yes, sir.
it's okay.
And actually, they've provided some minimal review comments, which just included adding some general FDOT notes to the plans. So as far as the connection, we should be getting the permit any day.
Okay. And also, there's a sidewalk that goes through there that anticipates one day is going to be part of our High Springs to Newberry bike trail, if that ever happens. But you cut that sidewalk. How do you intend for the sidewalk traffic to get through your entrance?
Once it's constructed,
Yeah.
we'll replace it. And then across the driveway connection, we're required to put striping, like a normal driveway
Okay.
connection for a
So-
protected crosswalk.
You'll have like a gate that opens and closes to let the
No.
trucks in, or this?
No, sir, there's no gate proposed.
Okay, it's just free-flowing traffic?
Yes, sir, and the radius is such that the width of the driveway connection and the radius on the turns in and out are sufficient for truck traffic to stay on
Okay.
the asphalt.
And will you put up signage for the bicycle and pedestrian traffic, stop sign?
A stop
that
sign is
crosses it?
required, but no crosswalk signage is required for the work that's
Right.
being done in the DOT right-of-way. Now, during construction, we're required to do what's called MOT, or maintenance of traffic. I'm sure you guys are familiar anytime you.
So you'll divert
Yes, sir.
the pedestrian traffic around the construction? Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from the board? All right, the applicant
Thank you
is relieved for the time being,
Thank you.
and the staff will now enter their report into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicants covered most of the pertinent items, but in their presentation, just give you an overview. Here's the subject property on the aerial. It's basically this entire area to the east is industrial. You've got this is actually an enclave that we're in the process of annexing into the city, so it's a little bit different story there, but then you've got some commercial intensive down here further to the south. You've got residential across the street, 2 neighborhoods. You've got the finished out neighborhood of Newtown, and then you've got the under construction neighborhood of Newberry Corners. You've got some vacant mixed use property to the north, and you've got the vacant agricultural open property to the northwest. As the applicant's agent mentioned, the land use was changed this year to commercial on a small scale amendment. As you can see, the future land use category is also industrial for the areas predominantly to the east, commercial further to the south, and then low-density residential and planned development due west. The zoning around the property, again, industrial to the east and a little bit some to the south. This property right here that's being annexed into the city, you've got one part of it that is zoned agricultural still, one part that's business highway. That's going to be brought into the city. Typically what we do is we bring it in at the most equivalent category to what it's currently at, and then the applicant can come back and change it at a future date. So I anticipate this will eventually be in a similar zoning as commercial intensive. Projects like this we like because from a planning perspective it provides some buffering between the higher intensity industrial areas and the residential areas across the highway. And so ultimately we think this whole strip is going to be some commercial buffering for the parcels that are the neighborhoods to the west, in between the higher intensity industrial. And that's essentially the staff report. The applicants have met basically all the requirements for a site and development plan submittal. We think it's a good project for the city of Newberry. Good for the tax base, good for employment in the area, and we hope that the Planning and Zoning Board, we recommend, well, there we go. Staff recommendation for this application would be to approve SDP 17-03, or recommend approval rather to the Commission, to the Board of Adjustment.
Any questions for the staff? Would you like to maybe just finish the comment you were talking about that board member brought up regarding the traffic flow pattern and consultation?
Yes, sir. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head what the thresholds are, but DOT has thresholds, and there's certain standards based on square footage and usage. And for this particular project, if the applicant's materials to FDOT demonstrated that they wouldn't be generating enough traffic to require either a left turn lane or an extended right turn lane into the property. When you generate over a certain number of, or you're expected to generate over a certain number of trips, then you can trigger that threshold, and then the applicant typically would be required to put one or both of those in. But the magnitude of this project was such that FDOT did not require that.
And that's an FDOT issue, not a city.
Yes, sir. On a state road, like State Road 45 or State Road 26, it would be up to FDOT to make that determination.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor.
Just as some background information on the turn lane on Easton, we didn't require them to put that in. It was before my time, but it was an afterthought. So they came back, and it was on the part of Easton who kind of wanted that. They decided that they have these big tournaments that are bringing in 2,000 or 3,000 archers at a time, and so they footed the majority of that bill. They may have footed the whole thing. Do you remember, Mayor Conrad, if they?
I think they paid all of it.
I think they paid the whole thing. So, but we didn't require them to have that ahead of time. That was something that company decided afterwards that they wanted, and so they paid for the entire thing.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments from the board? All right. Any rebuttal from the applicant? No? All right. The floor is now open for public comment. I'll remind you that you'll have a maximum of 5 minutes. Going once, going twice. All right. All right. At this point, we'll close the public hearing, and the commission will enter into deliberation. Any comments, concerns from the board that you haven't already expressed?
I agree with Brian. This is the kind of business that we've been trying to recruit into Newberry. It creates a lot of jobs, it helps our tax base, and we welcome this new business into town and hope we bring along more like you coming in behind you. Welcome to Newberry.
Any other questions, comments? All right, staff has recommended recommendation. At this point, are we ready to make any kind of motion?
I make a motion we accept, approve SDP 1703.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we accept SDP 1703. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor of accepting SDP 1703, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
I just wanted to take a moment to add my comments to Mayor Conrad's. Thank you for coming. We appreciate the compliment of our motto is "We believe in Newberry." When businesses come from Gainesville out to here, it shows that you believe in us too. So we appreciate that. I thank the board for recommending the approval, and we look forward to moving forward as quickly as we can.
Do we have a date, Mr. Chair? Do we have a date?
Yeah, I think
Heard by the commission?
the next step would be to announce the date application will first be heard by the City Commission. I believe that would be January 8th is the first available City Commission meeting. And so it'll be first heard by the Commission on that day.
Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification, the site and development plans go for one hearing before the Board of Adjustment, which is the City Commission sitting as the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
But that would be correct, the January 8th and the Board of Adjustment.
All right. On the same date, the Board of Adjustment will hear the first hearing on SDP 1703. All right, our next point of business is the quasi-judicial public hearing for SDP 17-04, an application by Bellarue LLC, whose authorized agent is DRMP Incorporated, owner of Alachua County tax parcel number 01924-010-001, for site and development plan approval to allow for an RV storage lot, including parking areas and stormwater management facilities. The property is located at 22121 West Newberry Road, 22133 West Newberry Road, and 22145 West Newberry Road on the property described as follows, and I'll just list the parcel number as 01924-010-001, and in the agenda we do have an abbreviated legal description of that property. As this is a quasi-judicial meeting in this session, the procedure is to ensure that the applicant provides a complete presentation of their request prior to any testimony being provided by the staff. All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. Again, the procedure we will follow will be that we will first hear from the applicant, and their presentation will have no time limit. The applicant will then be subject to cross-examination. The staff will then enter the staff report into the record and answer questions. The applicant will have the opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony against the application. The floor will then be open for public comment. Each comment will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Members of the public will have an opportunity to question the applicant or the staff during that 5 minutes. The applicant will have an opportunity for closing arguments. The public hearing will be closed and the commission will enter into deliberations. Anyone wanting to speak now should stand and raise their right hand. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You can be seated. All right, at this time we'll invite the applicant forward to give their presentation.
My name is Holly White. I am a representative of DRMP Inc. and project manager. The property owner, Mr. Beltz, is here to speak if any questions arise as well. This is a request for approval for a site development plan for Bellarue LLC, which is a RV and boat storage property. This is just the general location. This is the main street here, and it's about 2 miles east of that, along Newberry Road. Tax parcel number 01924-010-001. We are anticipating to utilize the existing access from State Road 26. There is a left in, and it'll be right in, right out. Right in, left out. No additional access points are proposed. We are utilizing the existing driveway there. There's an office building at this point. So this driveway is already constructed, and we will match that driveway. It is commercial zone use, and it's surrounded by other commercial use and agricultural surrounding it. The existing office may be utilized for office for this RV and boat storage site, but it's not a part of the project. General project information, there are 236 total proposed RV and boat storage spaces here. Metal and steel storage structures will be utilized for the storage spaces. Stormwater and associated utilities will accompany that, as well as proposed planting buffers around the site. We have buffers of 10 feet on the sides, 20 on the front, and 15 on the south. The stormwater management facility is located on the south end of the property, which creates more of a buffer from the residential agricultural use there. And all of the plantings are proposed per the land development code in that area. So that's pretty much it. I have all the plans here if we need to see anything, but there's an existing power line along the south end of the property. So that does limit the plantings in that area because we need to leave easement space for that and setbacks. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, if I could ask you to elaborate a little bit on the utilities, what are your plans for water and sewer?
Water is, all of that is, the owner intends to do that later as a separate item to construct a well and provide sewer for this site.
There's a well on site.
There's a well on site, and if that can't be utilized, then another well permit.
What happened to Brian? How is he?
Amari, can we get Brian back in here, please?
Or maybe, I don't know, Wendy?
Well,
Brian needs to
but
be
should we,
here.
should we wait for the staff report and then questions
Yeah.
during their report?
I was asking her about utilities on the RV site. She said they intend to construct a well later, but I know we're putting water down State Road 26. Is there any intention to have the city provide water over there on the other side of the road?
Mr. Chair, not at this time, primarily because of the expense for jack and boring under the state road. The need for water on this site is such that there's not really any fire flow requirements that I'm aware of. There were no comments from the fire chief that there would be any. And so for what they need, which is basically water for some irrigation of the landscaping, I think that a well is considered to be adequate. And there's not going to be any septic or bathroom facilities on site. And so there's no requirement for water to provide water for that as well.
And the existing well will be utilized as long as possible. And then if it has to be relocated, that would be a separate process.
Yeah, I think it looks like there were several wells on the property. There's
Yes, there were
several
two.
residences
Yes.
that you're going to take down.
Yes,
Probably all
so-
have wells and septics.
Yes, one will be abandoned. There's one that's around the area of the stormwater management facility. That well will be abandoned, and the other well will remain in place until.
I didn't go in great detail through your plans, but do you have some call out in the plans that say you'll do the proper capping off of the well and?
Yes, sir. On the demolition sheet, C0.30. The well to be removed is at the kind of the southeast corner near the existing utility pole. And note number 2 says well abandonment must comply with Water Management District
okay.
rules and applicable state and federal requirements. Proper permits required.
So you're going to abandon one and use the other one
Use
for?
the other one. If the other one needs to be relocated in the future, it would be abandoned through that same process, and a new well would be
You don't anticipate any washing of RVs or dump station or anything like that?
They will have a wash station, but it's not anticipated to be anything major. Nothing that would trip any potable well requirements.
Okay, that's all I have.
With the statement of the potential for future sewer or other type of utilities, how drastically will that change the necessity for septic in this area? I assume the existing structures are on septic right now.
Yes.
Would those be utilized or abandoned, and then any future would be have to be re-permitted?
And any need in the future would have to be permitted, and at the time that it would be required.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Could you just, or your client, explain to me a little bit about what kind of activity happens here? People just pull up and wash their RV and leave it there and leave? Do they come and visit the RV? Do they?
It's a storage facility, so this would be where people who, they don't have that type of garage or system at their home, they can bring their boat here, store it in this facility, bring their RV, both of them, and, there may be some washing, but it's not set up as that type of facility. It's a storage facility.
So if I just want to get away from my house for the weekend, I don't just come and stay in my RV there.
No.
There's no on-site. Just because my RV's there, I can come do maintenance, but I can't stay overnight. So how many people do you anticipate having working there on the site? Is there going to be like one person there on a full-time basis?
Could you answer that, Mr. Betts?
Good afternoon. My name is Billy Belts. I'm one of the primary partners. Todd Russo, my other partner, would have been here tonight, but he had a car accident, so he's having surgery right now. This is sort of a homecoming for me because over 2 decades ago, I sat in this very same conference room and did Newberry Commercial Park for Ronnie Rowland right out of college. And when Ronnie asked me, I said, how hard can it be for a large-scale land use change? 18 months later, we finally got the project done. So I earned my stripes right here in this room, and Bryce wasn't even a thought at that time. But the project that we proposed, when my partner called me on this particular need, I knew within a minute, actually about 10 minutes, the property that would be best suited for this project. It was the old Cox Lumber property. It had the deceleration lane in place, it had the proper frontage, it had commercial zoning in place already, which allowed this type of use. It was low density type use. We created almost a 200-foot buffer to the south on purpose to try to insulate the residential behind us. Dale Turlington, the property owner to the east, called me, totally supports the project. He couldn't be here tonight because of another plan board meeting, but he said he'd be glad to come talk to you or send a letter in or whatever's required. The scope of our particular project is a high-end RV and boat storage. I don't know if anybody's familiar. There's one in Alachua called Barracuda.
I'm not in that tax bracket, so.
Yeah. Well, one thing about it, Newberry has created a lot of housing in the past decade, which have created smaller and smaller yards with less opportunities for people to have boats and RVs. And the homeowner associations aren't happy with people storing them behind their houses. It's against a lot of the deed restrictions. So what we wanted to do was create a place that was secure and safe and clean, that somebody could store their boat inside or outside, depending on their price point. Barracuda is one in Alachua. There's also one right on the interstate as you go into Ocala on the right. So our buildings would be, majority of them be open canopy, 14 foot tall, galvanized steel with a trim that you could park a motorhome or a boat underneath. And then we would have some outside storage. We're going to phase, or our hope is, if we get approved to go forward with this project, is to phase this project. It'll at least take 2 years before it's the 236 spots are full, is our projection. So that's the case. We'd put building as you come in on the right, and we'd put the building to the south, which will probably have a back to that building, which would create even more of a buffer to our south. And then as we filled up, we'd start building more buildings. We'd have a 6-foot fence around the whole property with barbed wire on the top. We have our landscape buffering. We'd have infrared sensors all the way around the property. So if that's breached at any time, it will signal us and let us know. Our hope is, or our plans, if all goes approved, the 3-story structure that's on the property to the north, basically its northeast corner, would be a resident on site that would stay there during the night and on the weekends. We will probably have 2 or 3 employees that will utilize the office up front, which used to be Tri-County Veterinarian Office, which we're trying to fix up now. And then we'd have the night manager on site as well. So we have video cameras, infrared, on-site management. My guess is it's probably one of the safest places in Newberry once we get up and running.
So 3 to 5 people
Yes.
fairly regularly on site. That's a huge demand. I didn't realize there was that much. Come to
when I
think of it,
say-
I mean, we have a lot of developments that
Yeah.
we have problem with the boats crossing the sidewalk and those kind of things they probably need.
I would think, when I said 3 employees, I would think that the on-site manager and probably his wife would be 2.
Right.
And then we'll probably have a person or 2 part-time people taking turns in the front. It's not a high traffic business. Most people on average, about 15% of the people come get their RVs and boats on a regular basis. So you might take your boat out 3 to 4 times a year, and you might take your motorhome out 3 or 4 times a year. So you're probably looking at less than 30 to 35 trips a month in and out once you get your spaces leased up. So it's not a high traffic in and out. It's just, some people go more than that. My partner fishes all the time. My preacher, I live next door at Janesville Baptist Church. Corey he fishes every Thursday, but for the majority, people, we just don't. So,
Mr. Chair,
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr.
Bill.
you mentioned you have people living on site.
yes,
So you would need some kind of water and sewer.
they already exist. The well, septic are already existing on the structure.
So you would use the existing,
That would be our only choice because we don't have
Septic.
utilities. Yes, sir.
which we don't know what condition it's in or anything.
Well, we could always, obviously, if that was a concern, we could have the septic tank certified. That would not be a problem.
Well, usually with new construction, if you're going to build a bathroom or facilities, you have to have a new septic tank. I don't know, I'm just talking off the top of my head. I'm not sure what the regulations are. Looking over to you, Brian. I know there's a lot of old septic tanks in Newberry that don't.
Yeah, this house was
don't
built
work.
in late 80s. Flanagan was a gentleman who built it.
So you would
Actually,
be
I talked to
using,
Dale Turns in the property, and he was telling me so this is a current type system and code would be my guess.
so you would be using one of these existing buildings.
Yes, sir, the existing house, which is on
It shows them
the,
as being demolished.
Yeah.
well, we showed them on the demolition plan because we want to get the whole project approved. And like I mentioned earlier, I would imagine it's going to take a couple years to phase all the new buildings in. So that's why we show the total site developed. The house sits, the second wide building, it would be this one. Yeah, the house is right there. So
Is it visible from the road?
the
Trying
house,
to picture in my mind if that.
you kind of can see it a little bit. It's a taller structure. So like I mentioned earlier, we would do this building first, this one to create as much buffer as possible, and then probably half of these 2 buildings. So this would be towards the end of the site.
And how much, if everything went the way you wanted to go, how much of the structures would be visible from the road?
By the time we did the fence and built this building here and put the landscape buffering in, you might be able to see the top of the two-story house, but this building's 14 foot, 6-foot fence in front of it, landscaping, and then a two-story house, maybe 20. If each floor is 10 feet, so you'd have 20 to the eave, and then whatever the roof is, so maybe 6 feet.
I drive by that road every day, and I wasn't aware that there was a two-story house back there.
Me either. I've lived there all my life.
Yeah.
So,
Learn something every day.
Mr. Chair, if I can approach.
Certainly.
This is the existing house right here.
Yes, sir.
So this would be your last phase. So you'd build this metal structure, this is grass, and have the house here for
Yes, sir.
some length of time?
Right. We do yeah, that's correct.
So maybe in regard to one of the mayor's questions, these are pull-through spots but would not have hookups for electricity or water for those RVs or boats. They are,
Would not have hookups
Parking.
for the water. We would offer a 30 amp breaker just to run on the motorhomes, not so they could power and stay there, but just so the air conditions, the dehumidification feature would turn on. Yeah, and another thing, as we did more research, we learned more and more about it as well. In order to rent a spot, you have to bring in your driver's license, you got to bring in a title and insurance on each vehicle. So it won't be like anybody just comes and rents a spot and can come and go as they want. We'll know exactly who's there. They have to provide insurance, have to show proof that they actually own the vehicle, driver's license. So we're quite aware of making sure it's secure, and that's our main goal.
other questions or comments for the applicant?
Does this how far back does this property go?
How far back? It's 650 feet off the road, and then it's 650 feet deep.
Does it butt right up against 218th Street?
No, ma'am.
Any questions? All right, thank you, sir. At this time, we'll have the staff enter their report.
Mr. Chair, our principal planner, Wendy Kinzer, will be presenting this report.
Excellent.
You do have the staff report, and that's being entered into the record, so you have that. And I think the applicant have pretty much covered all of the, very much many of those details. I think if we just take a look at the next, let's see, slide, which shows you just some of the location. And again, it reminds you of where it is. And like Chabelle said, it's being with its, am I doing this right? No. So you can see that it's south of the Newberry Road, and like you said, 650 feet. You've also got the office, the veterinary office that used to be there, and that building is still there. You see that it's across the street from Comoco Ranch. You've got the Greenfield Daycare further to the east, and then to the west, you've got Milam Funeral Home. It's about 840 feet, I'd say, about heading east from Milam Funeral Home. And you can see that these, like Commissioner Laird said, that she goes by this road all the time. I mean, you see the location, like you, Mr. Chair. So you know that it's pretty remote, but yet there are single-family homes scattered about, and there are other businesses out there. You've got commercial zoning, commercial land use to the north of this property and the property itself. And then the agriculture zoning is surrounding, so it's the commercial general zoning is for the property, that's the red color. And you have commercial general itself allows these types of uses by right. So you do have that information in your packets for the zoning regulations. And that describes that it does require certain kinds of buffering and certain kinds of review, and that would be site development plan review, which is before you now. So it does have the proper zoning and land use, and it's before you now for the details of that plan and that layout. So you do have those requirements in your packet, and the staff is recommending approval. This is the kind of location that we usually like to see because it's set back from the main thoroughfare. It isn't something you see right up there on front of on the road, and it's got good setback, and you've got a use that everybody needs, or not everybody, but many people need. We know that there are many developments out there that are not providing for RV and boat storage, and it's becoming a problem, and it's becoming a codes enforcement and a fire safety issue, health safety. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you.
Questions for the staff? Did I see in there that the staff did make the one recommendation regarding the screening related to the fence? Was it moving the screening outside the fence or inside the fence? I can't remember exactly which one it was.
One of the suggestions was, I felt like that it was really important to have the buffering on the outside where the neighbors could see it or the people that are going by. But it is an issue sometimes when you're trying to maintain it, and especially if to water. So that's something that the applicant would need to look into. A recommendation was to have it on the outside of the fencing, but that means you pull your fencing back in further into your setback. So you want to make sure that you can still maintain that full buffer and then have your fence on the inside of the buffer, inside the property. And that would be something we would recommend, and the applicant would need to address further. And you know that they'll have to provide their water management permit when they get that, or their exception, either one.
Okay. Mr. Mayor.
Does staff have any objections here at all? Other than what you've stated?
Does staff have any objections?
Concerns?
I think, no, we know that we want to encourage that this development hook up, but at this time, they do not need water and sewer for the level that we would think. But when that's available out there, and as development continues, that is something that would be discussed later, and they would be approached to say that it was available, and depending on what kind of development is happening out there. But we have comments from our utilities department, from our public works director, and he had no concerns at this time.
Does this development utilize one of the new zoning packages that we created, or does this comply with zoning that's already on the books? Because I know we just came up with a new package, right? Or is this one using that?
That's the corporate business.
Right. It's not utilizing any part of that.
It's using the existing commercial general zoning that's on the property. Mr. Thomas can speak to that. The district for the corporate business park is more detailed in a different type of use. It's not quite, doesn't quite lend itself to this, but he can talk about that further if you'd like.
Have we put any limitations on when people can come in and drop RVs and boats off? Like, can I come in at 2 in the morning and drop it off?
That has not been discussed. That could be something that you want to look into.
A lot of these storage places, they have, code so that people can kind of come in and out when they want. We didn't talk about that with the...
No, there was discussion that this was going to be, how it operates. The applicant was going to be providing that information. And
down the road. So most likely there'll be a gate with a keypad and people can kind of come in and out at their convenience.
That's my understanding. They can limit that, and you can request that it be limited, and then go from there.
Okay.
If there's a need.
One other question. Is there an potential issue with a residence being maintained on a commercial property?
You can have an existing residence, and in this case, it's a caretaker, and that is provided for in our regulations. So that is part of this, and you would be approving that as a part of this.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to reiterate, codes enforcement is one of the departments under the planning department, and so I can definitely attest to the need for this in the community and the broader community as well. as mentioned, with the advent of smaller lots and less location on neighborhood properties to store these types of vehicles, we have been receiving complaints over the last couple of years. It either violates city code because people are parking in the right-of-way, which isn't allowed, or in one instance in the front yard, which is also not allowed. And then also homeowners associations causes friction with some of the residents. So this gives people who are restricted in the size of their lots a viable option to legally and safely store their boats and their RVs. And so from that perspective, we definitely think, we know there's a need out there. I think it's a good project. And as Ms. Kinzer mentioned, having a project like this that actually has the ability to be set back from the highway. You've got 650 foot essentially of screening. Eventually that property will develop into some other commercial purpose. And so my thought is we'll probably hardly know it's there once it's up and running, just because it's set so far back. So we think it's a good project and something that the community needs.
So I can infer that this would make code enforcement's job much easier because you can provide them with information of an alternative to their current situation.
We would certainly be pointing them in that direction, yes, sir.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms.
And I apologize that I wasn't in when the meeting started, but before we continue on this application, this is a quasi-judicial hearing, and so I know we're a little late to this, but I'd like to inquire at this time if any member of the Planning and Zoning Board has any ex parte communication on this application, and if so, if they could disclose that now.
Someone just called me and asked me when the meeting was, and I told them tonight.
Okay, but there was no further substantive conversation?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I have none.
I have none.
Thank you very much. And have we taken any testimony besides staff on this application?
Just the applicant and staff.
Okay.
But they
They
were
were
sworn.
sworn in, okay.
We got that one done. Yeah, add that to the list of. Any other questions or comments from the board to the staff? All right. The applicant has an opportunity for make any other comments based on the discussion that questions we had for the staff.
Glad to answer any questions.
All right, this time the floor is open for public comment. I'll remind you that you will be limited to 5 minutes total for any comments. And you'll direct those comments or questions to me as the chair of the board. And then we will allow the applicant to have any comments after that. So whoever wants to be first. When you do come up, please state your name.
My name is Marina Rojas. I was born and raised here, and my property actually backs up to this development. And I received notice last Saturday, right before I was leaving the country to go on vacation, came back yesterday. So really, it's my first chance to look at this information. I was concerned that we have a commercial property backing up to our homestead. Well, not my homestead, but my siblings and I have property there as well. And it backs up to my property and my sister Deborah's property. After trying to review this really quickly, and I'm not a developer, I understand that there are worse things that could be approved to be there, so it's not a bad commercial property. My concern is how far back are you going to be up to our property, because we do have people living there, and that was the concern. The buffer line, the respect for the people who've been there and in their family for over 65 years. Also, I do have concern listening to the possibility of people bringing RVs or boats in at all hours of the day or night. I just lost my mother back in March, and she lived on that property, and I can tell you, she lived by herself. that from time to time, we did have people approaching 218th Street, and it was a concern. I realize that this is a whole different situation, but you have to be respectful that people are living there, and they do not want to hear people coming in and out of property all hours of the night if possible. So I'd ask you to consider that. And I would like to find out about the buffer. That's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comments? All right, hearing none, we'll close public comments. The applicant has the opportunity for closing comments at this time if they would like to address anything that the board brought forward, any of the public, any of the issues the public brought forward.
Holly White with DRMP. The buffer requirement on that south end of the property is 15 feet, and that we will have plantings on the north side of that. There is a utility line, an electric line through the south end of the property. It ranges from 15 to 30 feet setback from that, so that has to be clear of that utility line. But beyond that, north of that, we have our stormwater management facility, and that all equals to, it's probably 150 to 180 foot buffered entirely before you ever get to a storage facility. The plantings around there, the stormwater management facility, will create a buffer from the actual storage facility to the south property.
All right, thank you.
That's your question satisfactory.
I'm not sure how we address it. So, 150 feet plus 15 feet minimum setback from property line to the first building, correct?
I don't know the entire measurement,
Okay.
but it's at least 150 feet from the south property line to the storage facility, I would say. 15 feet, there's a 15-foot buffer there within that 150 or so feet. And this isn't my plan, but there will be trees planted on the south side of that, south end of the stormwater management facility and around all sides of the property. The very last plan sheet, C 3.00, that shows the planting plan, and it shows the buffer on there.
Okay. Any other comments before we close the hearing?
No.
All right, thank you. So at this time, the hearing will be closed and the commission will enter into deliberations. Comments, questions do we have on the board?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Could I just would like to ask our attorney to kind of review quasi-judicial procedures because they are a little bit different, and the decision-making and what you can bring into your decision-making is a little bit different in a quasi-judicial than it is in a different kind. So I always just like to have a refresher before we go into those deliberations, if you would, Madam.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah, absolutely. In a quasi-judicial hearing, you all are acting as kind of the informal judge instead of with your legislative hat actually making policy decisions for the city. So in a quasi-judicial proceeding, we swear in our witnesses, and then the decision that you make needs to be based on the competent, substantial evidence that is presented to you here at the dais this evening. And so that's why I inquired about the ex parte communication to see if any of you had any information that you had learned prior to the hearing.
Thank you. Questions or discussion amongst the board now?
Mr. Chair, everything sounded good about this project until they said phasing, and that kind of brought back memories of Newberry Christian School and how the problems we had with them having a great project, but they were going to build it a little bit at a time. And the first part of it, you would have, like this project, a partially constructed project, an existing home that people are living in and operating, a few, maybe one row of mobile or RV and boat parking, and but the first part of it would still be undeveloped land, and then you would have a problem of when they filled up that first part, would they maybe be parking on the second part before they got all the paving done, and it would be something that we'd have to keep up with if they had adequately prepared the different sections and torn down that house and found another place for the caretaker to live, which isn't in the plans at all. So, I agree that the community needs this kind of facility. It's properly zoned for this area. But it makes me a little nervous to say, well, you can build a little bit of it and then open for business. And although it's not going to be the high-end facility we talked about day one, if you only build one row of parking and you got people living in this derelict house, it's not going to be a real nice facility until all the phases are built. And I don't know. I think we need to have a very close look at the phasing. How much are we going to let them build or require them to build before we give them a CO to open up for business in there? I just don't feel comfortable about that. I don't know what the other board members feel at this point. But I know we had this type of discussion when we talked about Newberry Christian School, and we weren't happy with the fact that they were going to be operating on roads that weren't yet paved, and you have muddy roads and those sorts of things.
Other questions, comments, discussion from the board?
No, I agree with Mayor Conrad that I'm uneasy with not knowing what's going to be built when and what the timeline is. And we have a site plan with destruction. We have somebody living on the facility, which I understand is allowed, but when will they be off? When will they not? Will the perimeter fence be the first thing and cover the whole thing? Or will there just be one barn for storage? And I agree that that is unclear.
Yeah, I could not find anything about phasing in the material that we were given.
No, I didn't either. I love the project. When I saw it on the face of it, I said, this is great, it's just what we need. But then when you said phasing, now I can't find anything that tells me how much of this is going to get built, like I say, before we open for business. And
Mr. Chair, I was going to
Yes,
say,
Mr. Mayor.
it's the board's decision. You're deliberating, but if you've thought of new questions for the applicant, then it's certainly you're right to say, these are the concerns I have. Do you have an answer to those concerns?
What's the discussion of the board? Would you like to hear more testimony from the applicant?
sure.
All right, Ms. Applicant would like to come back forward.
Thanks, Billy Belts. I appreciate the opportunity to come forward. I did a disservice when I said phasing. What I meant phasing was the actual structural buildings, which are a separate building permit that I have to apply for. The site work would be all done at one time. All the paving, all the stormwater, all the fencing, all the landscaping, all at one time. Yes, sir.
Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Like
Mayor.
you said, the existing house where the caretaker's going to be living is right in the middle of the northernmost, or the second to the northernmost
It's right here.
metal structure, parking structure.
Yes. I can still do all my site work and not build that part of the building. I mean,
All
I
your
can
site work
build.
except what's under where that building is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you say all your site work, does that mean all the paving or just the
Yes, sir.
clearing?
No, sir. All the paving. Everything you see here will be built. All the paving, all the fencing, all the retention pond, all the landscaping, everything. And we'll apply for permits to put these structures up as we start filling the project up.
I guess I'm going to reiterate Mr. Conrad's comment that are the driveway and the parking areas not hard surface?
They are hard surface.
So you'll have to destruct that house as you do the complete groundwork.
When we totally get done, we can still go all the way around the house. I mean, the house sits where the building's going to be, right?
Right, but there's going to be a hard surface underneath that building.
Yes.
So you'll have to take the house out to put that hard surface down.
Okay. If it pleases the board not to have any on-site management, then we can.
But you're missing the point. You said you'll do all the site work and all the prep work
Mhm.
and all the paving,
Yes.
except for where the house is.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
The house sits right here, which is under this building. This little part right here.
Sorry,
No
because
problem.
there seemed to be some confusion. Is that eventually the house going to be under the structure?
No, sir.
So you're going to build everything, that house, but eventually that last
This little piece
panel
right
of
here.
parking there,
Yes, sir. There's like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 10 spots?
so that
Right
last place where you will house boats and RVs, you'll lay the concrete and the building up to the house,
Yes, sir.
and then eventually you'll tear down the house, and
Right.
so you'll do all of that.
We actually thought that, I mean, to be totally honest, I thought on-site management would be an asset to the project, and that's kind of why I proposed leaving it there.
I mean, I think the on-site management is, I think we like that part. I think the
Okay.
part that the board is confused about is just, is it all going to be constructed at one time? You're saying all of the groundwork is going to be constructed?
Yes,
That
sir.
first level of sheltered
Yes, sir. This
spots is going to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and the grassy spots are going to be there. But the pavement, the hard surface for the second covered one is going to be there
all the
up until the house.
everything in gray will be building. Everything in gray will be constructed except for where this house
Except
sits,
for that
right,
house.
this little spot right here.
And eventually, at some point in time, you do plan to take the house away and finish out. And then will you still have on-site management? You'll move it to a different spot, or is that a yet to be determined question? I think that's where this board is trying to get to.
And I totally understand that. We'd like to have the opportunity to keep an on-site management on site, so it's possible that we don't build this last little section right here. But if the board doesn't feel comfortable with that, I'm sure we can just remove both structures now.
Well, I think the nations of the mayor's concern is that we had a project that came in,
Sure.
and the first was going to be brick and mortar buildings,
Right.
and then it kind of turned into, well, phase one is going to be portables, and at some undisclosed time, those portables may disappear in the brick
Sure.
and mortar. So that, I think that's where,
That's
if
understandable.
we can waylay that kind of concern, that this isn't going to be grass parking
It's
from the
not.
beginning, and then eventually someday there's going to be a structure.
Right.
So you're talking about building out 95% of it right away, except for the spot where the house is, and then
Yes, sir.
maybe coming back.
Yeah, and then we were going to apply for permits for the 4 buildings, which would be this building to create our buffer to the north, the buffer to the west, and the buffer to the south, which would have the back panel on it, and the almost 180 feet buffer from the south.
So when you said phasing, you were meaning
The
the
building.
site plan and then the building permit. That's what you were talking about in
Yes,
phasing,
sir.
not the actual building of the project.
No, sir.
That will be built 95%. I'm using
Right.
that
No,
percentage,
it's true.
except for where that house is. I get.
And
All right. I'm not trying to take a side. I'm just trying to clarify.
No,
So
no.
now everybody is kind of clear, and now you can go back to deliberating on that.
And once again, I appreciate the opportunity, and like I said when I first came up here, I did a disservice when I said phasing. I didn't mean the project, I meant the buildings that are going to be constructed. I apologize.
Yeah, I think the opportunity to have on-site personnel is great. I still question that spot, looking at the topographical diagram, what I could almost, and I'm no civil engineer, but I could almost envision where that house is going to be. You had a 2-foot fall in topical elevation, so again, no civil engineer, but it would seem like it doesn't make a lot of sense to do all the dirt work but put the footprint of that house and have to go back and regrade. So,
And you might be right, we might have to do a small retaining wall where it meets right there. I'm not sure, I didn't realize that it had 24-inch drop right there.
And you got the septic tank and drain fields that are
Sure.
still associated with that are who knows where on your plan there, that are still going to be used. So my recommendation would be, Brian, that we recommend that we send this forward to the City Commission with our approval pending some fleshing out of the details of how they're going to handle that piece of the property. Strike the word phasing and just say, well, I guess we have to call it, for phase one, they'll do 95% and draw out the part you're going to do, and then show us what part you're not going to do, and give us a better idea what it's going to look like with the existing building sitting in the middle of that thing. And also that we add the back wall to the southernmost building as an added buffer.
so one other question, as I'm looking at the vegetation map, you know, you've got that.
Mr. Chair, was that a motion?
It could be.
If it was a motion, then you might want to ask for a second if it dies.
More deliberate.
Yeah, so-
It sounded like a very articulate motion, so I didn't want to lose it if that was a motion.
Was it a motion?
Okay. Did you record enough of that to?
We are on video, so we always go back and look at it. Mr. Chair, what I would recommend is that we formulate a motion with all of the issues encapsulated in it as the recommendation, because the appropriate motion is to either approve with recommendations, or deny with reasons. And so, if we make if the board makes a motion and then that addresses the specific recommendations that they want, obviously one of them is to delineate
The on-site
phase one, so to speak, versus finishing the project in phase two. Would the board want to entertain time limits for completion of the project? Address the other issues that were brought were the hours, potentially limiting the hour, like limiting late night hours for arrival or something like that. But again, don't know what the industry standard is. I don't know if the industry typically allows 24-hour, 7-day-a-week access, or if it's common to limit to late night hours.
I don't have any problem with the hours, because like Billy said, you know, you won't have that much traffic. People tend to leave their stuff there long-term. And if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and they got a keypad, I don't think we ought to try to tie his hands. It's a business we want to come to town. Same thing with the time limit. It'd be nice to have say you'd be finished in a couple of years, but I know how it'll go. You'll see how many people you got when you fill up the first part of it, and you need more room, then you'd like to build more, but you'd hate to be forced to build the rest of it in 2 years, say, if you didn't have the demand for it.
Yeah.
So,
Our projection is a 24-month build-out of everything. The self-storage in Jonesville is closing. They've got about 40 spots. They're going to be removing that, building all self-storage. So we'll inherit those 40, or majority of those already. So we feel like, and we've got about 10 or 12 now on another location in Gainesville that will be moving out here that we're operating. So we feel it pretty positive that we're going to meet that 24-month.
we got one in between Newberry and Trenton.
Yes, sir.
The He-Man Storage or whatever it is. It's not a real attractive site, but
No.
I'm anticipating yours is going to look nicer. It's farther back from the road.
And that's
it'll
why
be covered, and the other ones are not covered.
And that's why we chose the 10 acres in the back instead of the 7 acres in the front.
Yeah.
And we wanted to be off the road. We really didn't want the exposure of the vehicles on the main road as well. And I think that piece will develop here shortly, and I'm sure it'll have a landscape buffer between us and them as well. So we'll probably end up with quite a bit of screening on that north property line.
So again, before you get too far away, it sounded like you had a motion with recommendations. Do you want to start over since it has been a while and articulate that again, or do we think we fleshed out the motion and can ask for a second? Madam Attorney, what do you think we can just have the second? If those recommendations have already been, the mayor's gone over them, Brian's rehashed them. Is that good?
Mr. Chair, my motion would be to recommend that the commission approve with recommendations. The first recommendation being that we delineate the plan for the on-site supervision or
Yes, sir. I'd be
and
glad to do that.
residents, draw it into the drawing where the residence is going to remain and how the development is going to occur around that with the drain fields and septic
Sure.
tanks, water lines and everything drawn in,
Okay.
and show it as not being demoed as it shows on the plans we have before us.
We'd be glad to do that.
And two, that the southernmost building have a back to it.
That's no problem either. We'd planned on doing that also.
And that's my motion.
All right, we've got a motion for approval with recommendations. Is there a second?
Is that
The motion was to recommend approval with recommendations to the city commission. Those recommendations being that the applicant delineate a plan with the caretaker facility, how that will be involved with the initial development regarding the structure and structure and septic system. Second recommendation, that the southernmost building have a southern back wall or back to add in or to facilitate aesthetic issues for the neighbors.
Can I ask a question before it dies? Or no? I can. Okay, so if we approve with the recommendation as proposed, how long is the site plan active for? And if they remove it from demolition, what does that mean to the site plan?
So, yeah, good question. Is, with these recommendations, does this site plan, is it still a valid site plan, or do they have to come back with a different site plan? And does that come to us, or just go to the city commission?
Mr. Chair, as the motion's been made,
Yeah, I think so.
it would, the revised site plan that included the elements of the motion would go directly to the Board of Adjustment as the motion has been presented. Approval with recommendations.
I second the motion.
There's been a motion and it's been seconded. Any other further discussion before we take the vote? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion for approval with recommendations going to the city commission, those recommendations as having already been delineated? I can go over them again if the board wants me to. All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, our next agenda item is old business. We have, we'll announce the date for application that will be first heard by the Board of Adjustment. This will be a Board of Adjustment. Would be January 8th also, so that will be the first date that SDP 1704 will be heard by the Board of Adjustment. Next item on the agenda is old business. There's none listed on the agenda that's been approved. So we move on to topics from members for discussion. Mr. Boyer has joined us just in time for topics of discussion.
Just want to mention how incredible our kids are in our community. We had a group of Oakview Middle School kids from Chorus over at Villages of Gainesville, the retirement center, and they were doing Christmas caroling. So our kids have big hearts, and we got a great community. Also, let's not forget, we've got a bunch of young leaders out there trying to get signatures together for single-member districts to get that on our ballot for 2018. So if you guys know of anybody, registered Alachua County voters, we need petitions signed to make this happen. Thank you.
Mayor Conrad. I don't have any. Mr. Mayor.
I just wanted to piggyback on Mr. Boyer's comments that represent me will be actually presenting to the Newberry Commission on December 11th. They'll be presenting to the High Springs City Commission on December 14th. These kids are working themselves to death. I mean, they are just all over. So if you can find it in your heart to share their Facebook post, forward their email, sign a petition, print off 2 more to get those signed. It's inspiring to see how hard they work. I should have known how hard they were going to work. That's how they go about everything else in their life. But it is they're setting the bar pretty high for us as adults to be civically oriented and civic minded. So look forward to a crowd here on December 11th. Hopefully come and listen to their spiel. And thank you for both decisions on the board tonight. I believe they were both good decisions. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to remind everybody that on the board that the next meeting will not be on the first Monday because that's the New Year's holiday, but it'll be on the second Tuesday. So Monday night, the 8th, you'll have the Board of Adjustment meeting, and then we'll have the Planning and Zoning meeting actually at 6 o'clock on the 9th. Just want to remind everybody, and staff's been working on the agenda for that, and it looks like we'll actually have several items for that meeting. So.
All right. No more comments. We will motion to adjourn the meeting. Don't need one, so we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.